Hi, everybody. It's Tim Constantine from the Washington Times, joined by my good friend for America. He is Dave Bozell. Hey, Dave, how are you?
Timothy, how are you? I'm great.
I'm doing very well. You know, one of the things that has amazed me in these first few weeks of Trump 47
Yeah.
is they got everything going. Government has an old habit of only being able to do one thing at a time. Not President Trump. They've got 18 things going at once, and the media's looking around thinking, oh, what do we cover? Middle East has been one of them. The Middle East, the whole Gaza situation, they do have a ceasefire, but of course there's trouble between Hamas and Israel. It wouldn't be the Middle East if there wasn't trouble. So what do you think? The president's plan is in basic, and it's changed a little bit depending on the day and who he's talking to. But in general, the president's plan is how about the United States just takes this little 13-mile by 4-mile stretch over? We will redevelop it. We'll invite people back in. It'll be big. It'll be beautiful. It'll be touristy. It'll be safe. And all of a sudden, these folks will have a beautiful place to live.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that generic plan?
Well, nothing epitomized President Trump's shock and awe approach as he's transitioned into being the 47th president more than that announcement. That came out of total left field. And it's a welcome announcement from my standpoint in that as someone who has grown up with Gaza being a thorn in American foreign policy for decades, a change in approach is certainly welcome. And I really hope that as Jordan and Egypt and some of these other Middle Eastern nations prepare for their own summit as to how to acquiesce to the president's call here to deplete Gaza of its current citizenry and living on essentially what, as President Trump calls, just a plot of death and destruction, taking in some of these citizens that are there now. I would really hope that some of the people in the liberal media and the Democrats and the left-wing foreign policy apparatus that said it'll never happen, they owe him an apology because they're about to undertake a summit to figure out how exactly they're going to fulfill President Trump's plan here. Like I said, I just think it's a welcome change in our foreign policy approach. And I look forward to seeing what might come of a new Gaza. I don't think that President Trump obviously is going to be around in the office to see his vision through completely. It's going to take 10 to 15 years at a minimum, but something drastic had to be done.
Well, if they can make this happen, I will compare it to the Reagan-esque bring down this wall. Yeah. Reagan wasn't president when all that actually came to fruition, but everyone recognizes that it was Ronald Reagan that made it happen. So if Donald Trump can make something like this happen, can develop that into a beautiful area, can welcome the people back and have peace, he'll be recognized even if he has long left office. However, there's some hurdles to be climbed here. You mentioned Jordan. The king of Jordan, of course, was in town this past week, and he sat down with the president, and he made a comment that when you said, how are they going to acquiesce? How are they going to figure out politically how they're going to work this? And the king of Jordan started to thread that needle. He said, well, of course, we would look at taking maybe 2,000 children that are sick with cancer and other illnesses and bring them in. And I thought, this is a great start. Okay, we recognize that there are some children in need, that Gaza is a pile of rubble, and that these children can have a better chance at life if they come, in this case, to Jordan. But that's true, of course, of many of those people is they don't have to stay forever. But for the next few years, while that's being rebuilt, and the analogy I made, I do a lot of appearances on television in the Middle East, and the analogies I've made this week is the California wildfires. All of those people are going to be anxious to get back to the property they own, but for the next 2 or 3 years, they're not going to live on that property. They're not going to pitch a tent and stay there. And somebody will redevelop their home, their property, and then eventually they will get back to their home. And so I said, if that's the method here, then that has some merit to it. The question is trust. Right now, the Arab community sees Trump so closely aligned with Netanyahu, who in their eyes is the great Satan. So they don't really trust Trump, and that's going to be the hurdle to get over. On the other side, the hurdle to get over is Hamas. I was talking with some folks out of Europe yesterday who said, clearly Hamas cannot be part of the equation moving forward, because not only did they stage that attack on October 7th, since that time, they have repeatedly said there will be more, that October 7th was just the beginning and there will be more. You can't have a neighbor living next to you threatening to kill innocent people. So those are the two big hurdles to get past. The other is Trump keeps saying, well, we won't have to have military there. We'll just build this beautifully and it'll be secure. And I thought, I don't know if that's hyperbole or naivete, but in that region, you're going to need security there no matter what you're doing. So that will be part of, do we get an Arab coalition to do that? Does the United States participate in that? But there will be trouble there no matter what. And it's going to take years and years and years to get stable.
Yeah, it will. Like the priority has to be the innocents. You talked about the 2,000 children who are ill. I'm sure there are children with special needs over there. I'm sure there are innocent women. Isolate Hamas, right? I don't think you want to go into this negotiation and say, okay, Jordan, you're going to take in the Hamas soldiers. Right. No country wants that. So I think you want to first isolate Hamas within Gaza, and then then the trouble may start, because they're not going to leave willingly. I think President Trump's foreign policy approach, man, no one thought in 2016, as he was going into his first administration, that President Trump's where he would excel the most is in foreign policy. And that's where I think he has excelled the most. He has a way with these world leaders that no other predecessor has had. It probably is because of his business acumen and business experience. But when it comes to leaders from the Asian Pacific regions, the Middle Eastern regions, he's dealt with Europe. He's dealt with all these guys in a business negotiation. He does approach this stuff from a real estate negotiating posture. I think that's advantageous. But his foreign policy legacy, because candidly, he has continued to struggle on the domestic front vis-a-vis Congress. And that's continuing to manifest itself as we head into March and Congress drags its feet on President Trump's agenda. But his legacy, I think, is going to be brightest when it comes to foreign policy when all is said and done.
I was on one of the Middle Eastern networks, and there was a professor from Egypt who was trying to make Trump as the great Satan. And he said, Trump is the worst nightmare of all Arab people. And I said, let me just ask a question here. Because for 15 months, you had President Biden, and for 15 months, you had war, and all the things you're complaining about, with allegedly 40,000 people killed and the area destroyed. And before Trump was even in office, the fact that he was coming to office and spoke nothing but peace. I want peace. I want a ceasefire. I want peace. I want those hostages released. I want peace. And it happened. And I said, so how is that the enemy of the people? And of course, he had no answer. I just thought, Trump is very brash. He can be very rude. I get that. You get that. Everybody in America sees that. However, he is very effective. He uses his tools, his skill set, and it's worked. And now he's looking over in Ukraine and Russia. That's another discussion for another day, but he's put his focus on that, and we'll see how that goes as well. Two quick questions before I let you go. How do you think the American people perceive this plan for peace in Gaza?
First off, on that one, generally supportive, but don't take your eye off the ball. He was elected with an incredible coalition, increased amount of Black Americans, increased amount of Hispanic Americans, women, basically every demographic that all politicos try to fight over. He won them all. But let's not also forget that it's a transactional vote from his coalition as well, right? He was elected to lower the price of goods and services in this country, gas, eggs, et cetera. He's got to get moving on that kind of thing. Now, I think we're still not even, I don't even think we're halfway through the first 100 days. So the grace period is going to get extended here for another month or two. But some progress needs to be made on the domestic front. And some meat on the bone. Doge is having it's been a blast watching these guys. And I don't think anyone really cares who cuts government spending, whether it's Doge or Congress or what, so long as it gets cut at the end of the day. But those are the types of things that I think he's going to get measured more importantly, from the American voter than what might happen in the Middle East. But I commend him on the change of thinking. It needs to happen, and hopefully, it has an indirect effect on the prices of goods and services in this country.
Final question on the Gaza issue, and that is, I mentioned trust and how the Arab community right now isn't so sure they trust Donald Trump because he is allied with Israel. So how does he effectively, diplomatically, how does the United States bridge that gap?
Well, it reminds me of what's going on with the federal workers buyout. The sentiment, I mean, 3.5% of the federal workforce has quit. About roughly 75,000 people. I would have thought that number would have been higher. Why isn't it higher? And you saw it in the protest language from the federales, I call them, that are protesting the cuts in their programs. We don't trust President Trump. They don't trust him to follow through on the offered buyout. I think that's a kind of a small but important piece as it relates to this discussion with Gaza. If he puts his word out there and he honors it, the more times he does that, I think that argument from the Middle Eastern partners, really starts to diminish. I mean, he's honored a lot of things that he ran on, and so you keep building those chits. And then you go back to the Middle East and say, look, everything that I ran on, I've done. I even canned 75,000 people and I gave them an 8-month buyout. They didn't believe it and I gave it to them. So those types of things need to be added to the negotiating table as chits to prove to the Middle East that he's serious and that he can be a trusted partner.
By the way, the only way he wins the Nobel Peace Prize is if he changes his name to Donald Obama.
Probably right.
Dave Lozel is For America.
Take it easy,
I'm Tim Constantine. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again soon.
Take it easy.